Welcome to the Sage Solutions Podcast, where we talk about all things personal growth, personal development, and becoming your best self. My name is David Sage, and I am a self-worth and confidence coach with Sage Coaching Solutions. We've spent a lot of time on this show lately talking about the defense, or how to spot cognitive biases, how to stop avoiding the hard stuff, and how to stop losing to your own impulses. We've also spent a good chunk of time highlighting some of the best moments of the Sage Solutions podcast in 2025. But today, we're shifting to offense. We're not just looking to survive your day-to-day. We're looking to actually master the complex systems of your life. And in order to do that, you need a different set of tools. We've talked about tools quite a bit on this podcast. In fact, each episode is giving you a combination of knowledge and practical tools for how to use that knowledge. And today is no exception. So if we're looking to accomplish what we want in life, we're going to need to adapt several different mental models. And the three mental models we're going to talk about today have been used by some of the world's biggest thinkers, including people like Aristotle and Munger. So, today, we're going to talk about first principles thinking. We're going to talk about second order thinking, and we're going to talk about inversion. But before we get into it, our goal with this podcast is to share free, helpful tools with you and anyone you know who's looking to improve their life. So take action, subscribe, and share this podcast with them. We've all heard the phrase, "That's just the way it's always been done." But those can be some of the most dangerous words in the English language. Most of us live our lives by analogy. We look at what other people are doing, and then we iterate, maybe making a 5% improvement on an existing idea. Now, I'm not trying to shame anyone. We all do this, and in many cases, this is what works. There are plenty of times where somebody has already done the first principles thinking, where somebody has already figured out a really good base way of doing it that becomes common knowledge, and then we're all sort of just putting our own spin on that. So just to be clear, I'm not trying to come down on that way of thinking. There's still going to be lots of areas of life where it's still going to work. But instead of just assuming that that is right, that we can only make that 5% improvement, we need to keep ourselves open to the fact that just because it's always been done one way doesn't mean that's the best way to do it. And first principles thinking can often be the solution. This way of thinking is about boiling things down to their fundamental truths and then building back up from there. It's a very philosophical way of thinking. Let's take a chef versus somebody who's just following a recipe. A recipe follower is lost if they run out of salt. However, a chef understands the use, the chemistry of salt, why it's there, what it does to the protein. They can always pivot because they understand the first principles of what salt is doing in that recipe and either use something that contains salt or change to a different recipe altogether. Now, most people listening to this aren't a chef. So what's another way we can look at this? Here's a scenario. Imagine that you're feeling stuck in your career. The analogy approach is to look for a better job in the same industry. Now, for some people, that might be the right approach. The first principles approach asks, what are the fundamental requirements of my happiness? And you may come back with, number 1, autonomy. Number 2, some form of creative output. And number 3, a financial floor of a certain amount of money, because we've all got to live. Well, when you break it down like that, you might realize that you don't just need a better job in that industry. You could realize that you should be in a different industry altogether. You might need a completely different vehicle to achieve what you really want in life. This type of thinking can be used in many, many different types of problems. It's challenging your assumptions, getting down to the absolute most basic principles that you can, and then building up from there. So the takeaway here is to stop just asking, how do I do this better? And start asking, is there a completely different way to do this? What are the irreducible components of this problem? And does that change my answer? The second mental model or tool that we can utilize is called second order thinking. And no, this is not sequentially second to first principles thinking, though I figured it was easier to put it in that order. Second order thinking doesn't have to do with the principles, it has to do with the long-term effects. While most people are not good at first principles thinking, they are good at first order thinking. What does that mean? It means if I do X, then Y happens. It's quick, it's easy, and it's usually what gets us into trouble. It's just looking at the first order of consequences, the immediate cause and effect. So here, first order thinking, I'm tired, so I'll eat this sugary donut. Result? Instant energy and pleasure. Second order thinking, what happens because of that energy spike? Well, it's super short-lived energy, so I'm probably going to crash in 45 minutes. It's a hit to my insulin sensitivity, and a loss of focus during when I was planning on doing a bunch of work. Also, not great for my waistline or my health in the long run. Second order thinking is asking the magic question, and then what? Every great solution creates a new set of problems. If you don't account for the and then what, you're just playing whack-a-mole with your life. This is why some productive people are actually just busy. They solve a problem today and create 3 more tomorrow, because they don't think about these ripple effects. Let's give another example. You decide to grind and work 80 hours this week to get ahead. First order thinking, you get the project done earlier. Second order thinking, your relationship with your spouse is strained, your creativity is fried for the next week, and you've set an unsustainable expectation with your boss. Your sleep has gotten worse, it's had a detrimental effect on your health, and you're pretty close to burnout now. Long-term or infinite thinking, as well as managing things like temporal discounting, all of this is tied up in the same place as second-order thinking. Don't just think about the immediate consequence. Ask, and then what? So our takeaway from this tool is extraordinary results come from evaluating the consequences of the consequences, not just the first order. So now we're going to move on to our third and final tool of this episode, the mirror. And no, I don't mean just taking a look at yourself. I mean like the inverse, the opposite, the inversion. This one is probably the most out there and the least used. And it's recently been one of my favorites, mostly because it's just so counterintuitive. Oftentimes we're taught to focus on how to win. And honestly, in general, starting with the end in mind, aiming for success, these are not bad things. But they can blind us to some of the pitfalls, some of the obstacles that will arise. Now, of course, we can use things like first principles thinking and second order thinking to help manage and think through these. But this third helpful tool actually has its origin from the Stoics. And not just Stoics, many great investors focus on how not to lose. Inversion is the art of flipping a problem on its head. Instead of asking, how can I have a productive day? Start asking, what would a guaranteed disastrous day look like? Now, this sounds like it's counterproductive, and it has to be done from the right state of mind. This is being used as a tool, not a default mindset. Well, if I'm just imagining how poorly my day could go, and mostly I'm thinking by my own devices, we're thinking about what we have control over, we're focusing on our locus. I'm going to answer something like this. Well, I'd stay up late doom scrolling social media. I'd check my email first thing in the morning and then get lost in that for like an hour without really making any progress. I would say yes to every question that was asked of me, even if it wasn't a good use of my time. I would eat way too much during lunch and just be wiped energy-wise for the rest of the day. I would forget to drink caffeine. I would slack off and not do what I'm supposed to do. I would procrastinate. I would start catastrophizing. I would worry about everything. I would take everything personally. There's so many things that could go wrong that would make my day go significantly worse. Well, congratulations. We now have the perfect anti-map. If you simply avoid most of those things that I just said, or whatever it is for the given situation, by eliminating the things that could make it go the worst, you are mathematically speaking more likely to have a successful day than if you just tried really hard to be more productive. Oftentimes, it's setting these boundaries with ourselves around these activities and eliminating unhelpful things that increase our productivity much more than some sort of small 5% iteration or productivity boost. The Stoics used a similar activity called fear setting, which helped you understand what the worst possible thing that could happen was, therefore setting a ceiling to your fear of it, making you realize that the worrying and catastrophizing in your head was likely even worse than the worst possible outcome. And then you can ground yourself up from there by eliminating the things that would make it happen. Charlie Munger used to say, "All I want to know is where I'm going to die, so that I never go there." Now, it sounds pessimistic, but in a weird way, it's kind of a high form of optimism because it removes the debris that stops your progress. In fact, it's a very pragmatic optimist type of approach. Figure out what can go wrong, eliminate those things, and then believe in the best outcome. So, our takeaway from this third and final mindset is to spend less time looking for the secret sauce and maybe try inversing it. Spend a little more time trying to identify the poison that's already in your routine. So, let's talk about integrating these new tools into our toolkit. I want you to just pick one of these. Don't overwhelm yourself. We're relying on an old tool, right? Which is why I kept it to 3, of not giving yourself choice paralysis through the paradox of choice. Pick just one of these and try that first. Maybe it's a relationship friction, plateau in your business, or a health threat. If it's first principles, what are the actual facts of the situation stripped of your assumptions surrounding it? Or second order it. If you make a change, what happens after the initial result? And lastly, you can invert it. What would make this problem 10 times worse? And are you accidentally doing those things right now? Building wisdom isn't about just knowing more facts. It's about having better frameworks, knowledge, and judgment for the facts that you already have. And remember, you are enough, and you deserve to fill up your inner cup with happiness, true confidence, and resilience. Thank you for listening to the Sage Solutions podcast. Your time is valuable, and I'm so glad you choose to learn and grow here with me. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on more sage advice. One last thing. The legal language. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. No coaching-client relationship is formed. It is not intended as a substitute for the personalized advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional.